made his own microphone. A suit cost $400, and nobody knows what time it is, despite the clock that's literally built into the show. One man has the courage to stand up and say, it's in time, not on time.
Hello, hello, and welcome everyone to In Time. With me today is 𝐒𝐨𝐿. 𝐒𝐿, how are you?
Okay. Chilling. Outside the DQ, grill and chill.
Yeah, we've got that was the guy from Honest Game Reviews doing an honest review of In Time. Yeah, it's a call-in show, so I hope you guys will consider the number is up there on the screen right now, and give me a minute because we also have some news we'll get into in a minute. But yeah, it's the call-in number is 406-446-8463. That's 406-4 in time. So you guys can give us a call, and we'll get you in here if you want. You'll see the number is going to be flashing down there at the bottom intermittently. And let's see, we did so there is a Michigan school shooting, 3 killed. 𝐒𝐨𝐿, you seem to be on that more than I am, so what do we know about that?
I just happened to scroll past on YouTube when I was looking. It happened something like 4 or 5 hours ago. Excuse me. Yeah, they were saying that there were three people were killed, several injured. They didn't say exactly how many. Apparently, it was the shooter was a 15-year-old, and police were able to get there within 5 minutes. So the event, lasted only about 5 minutes. Students and a teacher were shot. They didn't specify who was actually killed, who was injured. So it was all still very preliminary.
Yep.
I think that. Oh, I'm suddenly forgetting the comedian's name. He was on, I believe, America's Got Talent. He had a softball injury to the throat, caused a stutter. Now he goes and does Drew Lynch. That's his name. Comedian Drew Lynch said that he had the answer for school shootings, to simply get rid of schools.
Yeah.
That would eliminate all school shootings. He's like, and hey, look, 2020, none of the kids went to school. We didn't have any school shootings in 2020. Case in point, we now know how to solve school shootings. I mean, it was probably a lot funnier before this particular shooting, but he might be onto something.
So, Sinister Porpoise, I love this one. Wait, where to go? ¿Dónde está los solipsistas? Seth Andrews is in 2 weeks. Seth Andrews had to postpone, so we couldn't do him today. He is scheduled, I want to say, I think the 13th or the 14th, in exactly 2 weeks. So, the Andrews show is postponed. He was going to be out of town, so he couldn't do it. ¿Dónde está los solipsistas? And then los solipsistas se unen, well, they are united. By definition. All right. Well, okay. So, and then CNN has suspended Chris Cuomo. That's interesting. I'm curious to know. I know that there was some concerns that he was acting inappropriately in regards to protecting his brother, which one could imagine. But okay. And then Titan says he saw 3 dead, 8 injured, but we have no confirmation on that. So we'll look at it. The other biggies going on today. Mississippi has issued a direct challenge to Roe v. Wade. They are asking the U.S. Supreme Court to overturn Roe v. Wade. It is the most aggressive stance that any state has taken in an attempt to overturn it. And they have said that, quote, the conclusion that abortion is a constitutional right has no basis in text, structure, history, or tradition. So that is their challenge. And, at this point, it looks
Quick
like...
note on that.
Yeah.
I think that because there's a gun case before the Supreme Court as well. It was the New York Pistol and Rifle Association versus New York. And one of the rulings that came out of that, I don't think they've ruled on the actual case, but one of the findings that have come out of that case was the Supreme Court has actually laid out that you have to use original text and context when reviewing a law, and that's the only one that matters.
Mm-hmm.
So places like California, for example, when they're instituting gun legislation and certain bans on certain things, used a two-part finding process to find out whether or not the gun was or the law was constitutional, and it was competing interests view of interpreting the law. So the Supreme Court's actually issued a statement, a finding saying no, that's not in fact correct. You must use original text and tradition to interpret the law. Essentially what the law actually says and what it said when it was written. So that may be one of the things that compelled Mississippi to try and directly challenge that.
That's an interesting point. So, some state was going to, now that they have a majority. 3 of the justices were appointed by Trump. All 3 met his bar for saying that if they had a chance to overturn Roe v. Wade, if Roe v. Wade were back at the U.S. Supreme Court, would they overturn it? And all 3 of them said yes. So, I think that opportunity has been there for them for a while. So again, if you want to call in, the number is at the bottom of the screen. It's also pinned at the top of the chat. So anyone who wants to call in, would love to hear from you. I guess somebody wanted to call in from was it Denmark? We wanted to call in from Denmark. A call-in show. Thank you, Titan. I saw that. I was using voice dictation. I said, we're having a call-in show. And so Titan was just like, who's Lynn? How do I get a hold of her? And it was like, apparently, got to tell me what you want, Nick. If you want me to, who's Lynn? So Blazing Wizard, I guess, wants to call in from Denmark. Said it was, what is it, $1 something an hour? Said the sex lines are cheaper than that, but I said if he calls in, I was going to ask you to breathe heavily into the microphone for him. He didn't get back to me on that. Just saying.
Yeah, I can't blame him. I mean, I'm not entirely sure my heavy breathing's worth $1.50 a minute.
Well, and I'm not entirely sure if is that ethical for me to just be saying that pimping out my co-hosts? Yeah. Give us a call. Give us a call to In Time After Dark. No, I really don't. But I got to pretend to care at least. Call us.
I could go search down a lot lizard for you.
A lot lizard? No, I don't think we
get enough donations. Yeah. We might have to move this to OnlyFans.
Yeah. Yeah, it's tonight in time, simul streaming to OnlyFans, and So Blazing Wizard solved the problem. Free guns. Give guns to everybody, but make bullets cost $10,000 a piece. There you go. Gun problem is solved now too. So
it does create a couple of other issues, though.
Oh, yeah, why is that?
Well, because you are going to have people that have the money to get at least a few bullets, and now and of course everybody has a gun now, and there's a significant enough percentage of the population that would actually be able to get at least a few bullets, and now they're going to actually use those in a self-defense, but they'll have zero training because you're not going to spend $10,000 a round to train with the firearm.
Sure.
So those people who can actually afford a bullet or two will be carrying around with absolutely zero training.
Well, I don't know. I still like the plan. Actually, that reminds me to the all right, I'm just going to try to catch up a little bit with the live chat. I want to, just because it's a call-in show, I want to try to stay on top of the live chat here. But what was I going to say? It's actually, oh no, I've been late at night. I have a confession to make. This is true. This is completely true. Late at night, been getting bored. Need to clean up the office a bit, but it's a mindless task. So I'm sitting there going like, what can I do to occupy my mind? I'm doing it. So I've been going on to Muslim Discord servers and arguing with them, and that's interesting. It's very different than Christian apologetics. I'm sure once I understand the arguments better, it'll be back to Christian apologetics. But I'm definitely starting to recover a bit from the COVID brain fog. That the pattern now seems to be 4 to 6 weeks of brain fog, with the peak at the worst in the middle, and it starts to taper off, and then maybe 2 or 3 weeks if I'm lucky, completely clear, almost back up to normal, and then it seems to hit in again. So that's the pattern. But the brain fog is definitely lifting. So I'm just sitting there going like, okay, I'm gonna go out for a spin and argue apologetics with Muslims, and that's been interesting. That's what I've been doing at night. But I don't know why the gun analogy you were talking about, the bullets and the consequences of, and it just got me thinking. It got me thinking of an argument I was having last night, not because it had anything to do with guns, but they were talking about the unintended consequences of not believing in God or yada yada. It's nice to be arguing with people again. I call up his Andring all the time just to argue with him, and he's never available, which is really odd for a guy who's driving a truck all day. You've been busy.
Yeah. Actually, I kind of have.
Yeah. You don't. I just want to argue with you, but I mean, it could be on any topic. I mean, I don't care.
Doesn't even matter if you're right. You just want to argue.
It's never mattered if I was right. That's never been yeah. Make double-sided bullets so they shoot one in each direction. That's a good sign, you said?
Oh yeah, sure. I think that we should have a slightly more argumentative society to really find out what holds up and what doesn't. And too many people don't argue. They don't even attempt to defend any of their beliefs. They don't attempt to understand any of the arguments. They just say, yeah, wrong, and they move on because they've heard some pundit that aligns with their political views say something, and so that's just their gospel for them, and they're not interested in arguing. And I think that we should foster a more argumentative society where people question things, bring up points, make arguments, instead of just blind faith, believe in something because that's what's comfortable for them and that's what they want to do, and they don't give a crap what the other people have to say. They're not even going to consider it.
I got to get you on one of these Discords. I got to tell you, I've been on a lot of Discords, and the Christian ones have always been there. There was a Christian there, and he was being brutal. He was calling them ragheads. He was really deliberately being offensive. And I think he was just there to be provocative. I don't think he was trying to have an honest dialogue, but they were trying to talk to him. So far, every time I've been there, for the most part, it's been really respectful. They've let me talk almost as much as I want to. Then they'll respond. I let them talk. It's been really good discourse, and I have a number of theories as to why that is. But it was it's certainly better than Darth Dawkins' Discord. So let's see here. I am still, like, my brain is still all over the place, though, and I lose track of my... Yeah. Whatever. Super chat, $10, Jake 4D. Bullets and guns are ridiculously easy to manufacture at home. I don't think the bullets are. I could be wrong. I thought, as I understand, people kill themselves all the time.
You can do it at home.
Bullets. Yeah, really?
Yeah, you can do it at home.
Okay. Oh, well, there you go. These kinds of restrictions are ridiculous. The only way to fix the issue is with culture change or to require everyone to have guns, which is an argument I've made. Because, and I'm going to get it, I think somebody mentioned Sweden. I don't know if it's Sweden or, yeah, it's got it. Who brought it? Oh, Switzerland. Yeah, so in Switzerland, you're required to have a gun. They force everyone to have a gun. I say that to people, and they're like, oh, but I can't. They think I'm joking. No, I'm not joking. The government requires you to have a gun, which is one possible read of the Second Amendment, right? The government can't. Uh, Government can't infringe on your rights, and I'm sitting there going, technically paying for a gun is an infringement. Now, that's not the government infringing on your rights. I think that's what you told me last time we had that discussion, which is true. It's sort of like the free speech issue. So private citizens can do it, but frankly, I think if they can't impinge on your rights, I'm sitting there going, I could read that as they have to give you guns, and I'd be perfectly fine with that if we did everything that they do in Norway with them, or sorry, in Sweden. Ballistics reports for the guns, so that if it's used, we know exactly who did it. Yeah, everybody's heard me say this before. This is my positions haven't changed that much.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's like people talk about rights, and it's like, well, the government doesn't provide you with a printing press to make your own, but they can't prohibit you from making your own or buying a printing press. People talk about, they believe that healthcare is a right, and I kind of make the argument, well, healthcare is already considered a right and is already accessed as every other right is. It's available. The government can't prohibit you from buying any healthcare that you wish. I mean, they kind of changed that a little bit because the health savings plan that I had prior is no longer available. Because it didn't fit the requirements now of the healthcare plan for Obamacare, Affordable Care Act. So that was kind of annoying, but it's pretty much already considered a Whoa! Sorry, I got horribly distracted because I thought I would take everybody in on a trip to the truck stop and get like an ice cream cake from the Dairy Queen, and I had to use some of my really awesome brain power to actually figure out what the hell I was doing as I got some coffee. So yeah, I believe that healthcare is already considered a right and is accessed the same way that all of our other rights are. So, we're not provided it free from the government, but the government can't prohibit you from getting it yourself.
All right, and I wanted to say, so Jake, I don't think I said thank you, but thank you very much for your support, Jake. We really appreciate it. So I want to make sure I took the time to say that, and it's not just read the super chats, but to honestly say thank you for your support. It's we really appreciate it. You guys are huge part of the reason that this show operates the way it does. So thank you for that. Also, we've been asked, what are we talking about? Well, any number of different topics. It's a call-in show, so anyone who wants to call in and just chat with us can. The number is down there. The number is also pinned at the top of the comments section, and if you don't have access to either, I can tell you the number is 1-800, not 1-800, wow, sorry, 1406 4 in time. That's 1406 4 in time. Anybody wants to call in, and we can bring you onto the show. And then, so we there has been a school shooting, so we're still learning the details of that. Mississippi is issuing a direct challenge to Roe v. Wade, which is at this point I would have to believe likely to have some measure of success. The COVID Omega variant, as more and more time passes, the early numbers that we had that we showed in our last episode, unfortunately, are holding. And it's still too early to say that those are the final numbers, but I don't like seeing them hold. We were hoping that they would go down, and they're not going up, which is good, but they were already really bad. So hopefully they're not going to stay the way they are. And then the other one is, The Guardian is reporting that hours before the deadly attack on the U.S. Capitol, Trump made a number of calls to top lieutenants at the Willard Hotel in Washington. This was just hours beforehand. According to reports, he was talking about his disgust for Pence, who he said was weak and betraying his country, and was to find out if there was any way to stop the certification. Now, this is being spun, that I can tell, online as evidence that he engineered the 6th. Correlation does not imply causality. The 6th had been planned quite clearly from some organizations well before it happened. So we don't this isn't proof of that. It is further proof that he was, in fact, attempting his own kind of either insurrection or, certainly trying to overturn the democratic, democratically elected. Oh dear Lord, my brain still isn't 100%. The results of the election. So it's not good for him. But I don't think it's the smoking gun people are looking for, at least not yet. There may be more to it, but that's the Guardian report. And like I said, it's people are calling it a smoking gun. From what I've read, it's not a smoking gun, but it's not good. But it's not. We already knew it. We already knew he was trying to overturn the election. This doesn't prove that he was responsible for specifically the 6th. All right, let me. And I got someone coming. Okay. So again, anyone who wants to call in, the number is going to be back on there it is. There's the number at the bottom of your screen, and it is pinned to the comments at the top. And we have a $5 super chat from Maynard Saves on Amy Newman's stream. You once talked about why you don't think Jesus was made up due to the errors made. Can you expand your thought? Oh, yeah, I'd love to. It's the Hitchens argument, and there's a couple of other, and again, I still... Really, that's the thing I hate most about brain fog is the bad memory. So first of all, thank you, Maynard, for your support, and thank you for the super chat. Because I found a few people who've actually expanded on this argument, and I like the argument. So let's assume Jesus was fictitious. You're making Jesus up whole cloth. Well, you would probably have him born in Bethlehem, because you're trying to fulfill Old Testament prophecy. Actually, it's not. Some of it's Old Testament, some of it is. And I'm getting a lot of background noise from you, Xandering. Are you out walking, getting your ice cream cake?
Yes, actually, I'm walking back to the truck. I'm sorry, the wind's blowing. Give me just 1 second, because I have hands full of stuff because we're being so professional on this stream tonight. Holy crap!
You're not going to offer me any of the cake, I noticed, but all right.
I'll mail it to you if you want. I mean,
no,
a little soggy.
Yeah. So, all right. So, what do we have? We start with the birth of Jesus. Mary and Joseph ostensibly are traveling in order to take the census, and in general, if you were on the outskirts, you had to travel to the center of Rome to take the census and participate, and so that you can be counted and yada yada yada. I think there was other things involved in the census that's escaping me right now. On their way there, Mary, who is pregnant with Jesus, can't go any further. They stop in Bethlehem, and she gives birth to Jesus in Bethlehem. Now, this fulfills one of the prophecies of the Messiah. Okay, great. So now you've got Jesus, who is, this is further evidence that he's the Messiah, right? If Jesus were fictitious, it would make a lot more sense to just have him be born in Bethlehem. Why have all of this going about to travel? Well, maybe because it's true, right? Maybe that's exactly what happened. Well, here's the other thing about it being true is we know that the census A had already been canceled several years before, and B, Nazareth was actually so far out they were exempt from the census. Nobody in Nazareth had to take the census. So why do you have this story of Mary and Joseph traveling to take the census and stopping in Bethlehem to give birth to Jesus? Why? It makes no sense. It can't be completely true because they wouldn't have been traveling for the census, and they wouldn't have been traveling at that time of year for the census. So the question is, why do you have this story? If Jesus were made up, it would be a lot easier. Let's say you're the guy who's writing Jesus. You're not going to sit there and say, hey, let's have Jesus, his parents in Nazareth, but we're going to add some drama to the story, and we're going to have them traveling, and that's how he ends up getting born in Bethlehem. The only real reason to make all that part up is because Jesus is a real person. If Jesus was a real person who was just some mad Jewish preacher that you have decided you want to fit into the narrative of the Messiah, well, now you've got a problem because this real person was from Nazareth. So how do you rewrite the story so that it fits the requirements for the prophecy of what the Messiah would be? Well, the easiest way to do that is to say, well, he was traveling from Nazareth to Bethlehem for what? Well, let's say for the census. And they have now engineered an excuse to get him from Nazareth to Bethlehem so he can be born there. The only reason to do that is to take a real person and coax them into the the prophecy. And there's a number of other examples of this. I've forgotten all of them except for that one. I'll probably remember them 2 hours after the stream. But that is an example of a fiction that nobody would have put in unless they were trying to coax a real person into that. Oh, my bad. It was the letter J did not exist. Yeah, that is correct. The argument was that the letter J did not. And I had, oh, God. So one of the arguments, I thought at first it was Muhammad. It wasn't. It was a jinn. It was a desert jinn went to Egypt and taught them how to build the pyramids, and that's why we can't reproduce it. NASA has faked the fact that the sun actually can rise in the west, was another argument I heard. I was just like, oh, dear Lord. I was arguing that last night. I was just like, it's almost like I'm arguing with flat earthers again. But they had an interesting argument for that one. And then proof that, well, it rises in the west for Mars when Mars goes backwards, which, of course, Mars never goes backwards. It just looks that way. It was interesting. That's what I've been doing with my nights. So let me just quick, I think there was a comment. Having Jesus traveling around made it easier to make up stories about him. Yeah, people couldn't get. That's one reason why you didn't have to take that's why Nazareth was exempt from the census. One of the problems was how long it took to travel, especially if you're traveling around either the rainy season or right before winter. You're not going to get anywhere, and the chances you're going to get killed goes up quite quickly. So the farther regions didn't have to do it. Nazareth was exempt. So why in the Bible are they traveling for the census? The only possible reason: deliver Jesus born to the right place. Oh, so. Mick is an excellent producer, and the stream has been muted since. Yeah. I just made that joke earlier. It's like, well, our streams always do so much better when I'm muted. I don't know what. Anyways, give us a call if anyone wants to call in. The line is there. We're not doing an open hang. Well, that's Friday night, but I figured anybody who wants to. No, Venus spins the wrong way, but Mars. If you look at Mars in the sky, Mars on its rotation then slows down and then it goes backwards. For a couple of weeks and then goes back forwards again. It's retrograde motion as opposed to a retrograde spin, which is Venus, presumably in violation of the angular momentum of the universe. Another thing proving God. And I was just like, not that again. Anyways, I hope that makes sense, Maynard Saves. That was a long answer, and I think we lost his Andering, but we're going to get him back in there. So, right, we have his Andering back, and yeah, so that's it. That should cover that. I don't know if you caught. There have been some weird arguments. I got hit with the Kalam almost right away. Argued that for a little while. So my first time there was with people. Actually, it started with people who were very new at this and just sort of felt like, oh, hey, here's a stranger in here who's so stupid because he's using his full name instead of like one. Yeah. So I got into it and they're like, I think we're going to bow out of this. But that one was fun. The second time, some really weird arguments. Again, NASA and Area 51 are colluding, I think to hide something of the, I don't know. We'll get to it. Another super chat, $5 from Maynard Saves. Thanks, Nick. I can't defeat that at the moment. Like I said, there's a couple more, and I'll try to remember what they are. It's called the argument's been around, but it was actually popularized by Christopher Hitchens, who at first thought he was a mythicist, figured that Jesus did not exist, and then that argument convinced him. And then at I think it was 2009 Festival of Dangerous Ideas, said that he believed Jesus was in fact real based on that argument. So it's now called the Hitchens argument. How are you? Welcome back, Azerner.
Yeah, I had to rage quit. I was juggling too many things, and I tried to pull the phone out of my pocket and apparently hung up everything up. So, okay, you were making religious arguments, so it's not like I missed anything.
Yeah. Though I haven't really changed those in all that time. Well, it was funny because I was going back to, and it's like I was trying to remember some of my old standards for. There's a lot of God of the Gaps going on, but you know what? I will say this: I want to make this crystal clear. I doubt any of them are watching, but I do want to make this clear in any case, which is I've actually been treated for the most part with a good amount of dignity and respect over there. Certainly far more than I ever got on Darth's Discord. I think one or two people in Darth's Discord really tried to, and they're like, okay, let's treat this person with dignity and respect. And they're like, no, if they're going to be lying, and it's boom, boom, boom. It was, no, but these, it's been interesting. I think like I said, I think there are a couple of reasons for that. But at any rate, it's been fun. I don't know if I'm going to go back there tonight or not. My wife rather I do that than argue with her. I get my second wind usually around 10 p.m., so I start to crash, and then 10 p.m. I wake up and have to argue with somebody. And like I said, Xandring's just doesn't pick up anymore. I don't know why.
That's all we do anymore is just argue. I don't even think you like me anymore.
Well, I'm not sure I ever like to, but it's good arguments, right? I mean, come on.
Yes, but not at 2 a.m.
No, that's true.
There is no good argument at 2 a.m. other than Taco Bell is still open.
That's like my natural sleep cycle. And I have a whole host of sleep issues, unfortunately, but one of them is my sleep clock is off. I usually wake up around noon. That's my natural sleep cycle, is to wake up at noon. My energy level starts very low, goes up and up and up and up until about 10 p.m. 10 p.m. Oh my God, I am, that's perfect. And then I'm at a very high energy level that doesn't taper until about 4 a.m. Then I crash. And there's actually a class of, I forget what it is. There's a whole class of people that just have that specific layout. It's essentially the night owl kind of, whatever. But that's it. And so what happens is my wife's going to bed at 10 a.m. And that's right when all of a sudden I get a second wind. My energy level peaks for the day. And so I was just like, hey, honey, let's talk about, so I'll be tucking her in, I won't go to bed, but I'll lie there next to her and we'll talk, and then I'll just start getting, bouncy. It's like I'm on like Tigger, and I'm just like, let's talk about this. Let's talk about. Oh, I forgot to tell you this argument that happened today. She's like, could I sleep? I'm like, after this. And she's like, this is another reason I'm for gun control, is because I really don't like the idea of my wife getting a license to carry. I'm the murder rate in the Suter household is much more likely to climb precipitously if she is allowed to have a firearm. I'm just saying. All right, so yeah,
it's all become very clear. Your anti-gun stance is now absolutely understandable. You are a vicious member and perpetrator of the patriarchy, wishing to keep your wife powerless against your greater strength, and you just don't want her to be able to equalize the odds by having a firearm to be able to enforce her own will upon the world. So yeah, you're just a member of the evil patriarchy that's perpetuating toxic masculinity.
Hey, she can enforce her will just
fine. Did I throw enough buzzwords out of that?
Yeah, you did. Hold on a sec. Oh, bingo. Yep, got it. I got the eye down and across. So perfect. No, you got plenty in there. Yeah, no, she can take care of herself. But it's like right now we're kind of evenly matched. With her, she would not hesitate to get the firearm. She just wouldn't. And so I'd be hosed. So what was it? Legal Eagle. Have you ever seen that show, Legal Eagle? The YouTube lawyer.
Oh, not the television show?
No.
No, I have not.
I really like him a lot. He's got a good sense of humor, very direct. I think he has like 4 million subs, and he doesn't dumb it down. I mean, he really uses the full terminology and the whole 9 yards. But I really like that. he did a show on one of the more pressing legal matters about a year ago, and I was really impressed with the way he broke it down. He broke down Rittenhouse really quite well too. So I don't know if I get a chance, I'll link that down at the bottom. But legal Rittenhouse, and he just explains it very well, completely from a legal perspective. It gets a little confusing because he's like, okay, you can't murder, but there's an exception. You can kill people if it's self-defense, but there's an exception to the self-defense. And that's the provocation, but there's an exception to provocation. So you're talking about an exception to an exception to an exception. It gets a little, you have to concentrate when listening to it, but he does a great job with it. A bit misogynistic to assume that there's a woman weaker than. So, by the way, Xander, I did want to talk to you. I wanted to see if you wanted to go over our mod
I happen
policies.
To be here.
I was thinking we should go over at some point our mod policies and figure out if we really like mod roles that we have, who happens to be a mod here, who happens to be, say, a head mod here, or anything like that, and make sure that everything is something that we're all comfortable with, because starting to think there needs to be a change is what I'm thinking.
Thinking that, huh?
Yeah.
I would say it's pretty much your channel. So I mean, you're going to have to come to terms with who you allowed to be mods, and you're just going to have to deal with them.
Oh, listen, I've demodded our head mod like repeatedly, and it just comes back. I have no idea how it works, but he truly has voodoo. There are actually, I will say this, there are creators who are like scared of him, and they say they're not, and they're like, yeah, but it's like, because he does have voodoo. He's really got genuine YouTube voodoo, and it doesn't help when I demod him, and he's just like back the next day. He's like, okay, Nick, you got a link for the next show? I was like, how did you? I don't know. I'm confused. All right, so again, call in show.
You built your house or bought a house over an ancient Indian burial ground, didn't you? Because you're just cursed.
In time, I think
kind of like
time. I'm sorry, what? Yeah.
Oh, it's like the song "The Cat Came Back." It just always comes back the very next day.
I think In Time was built on an ancient burial ground. There's nothing we can do about it. Yeah, so we did a video on Rittenhouse. I think it was a good show, and I'm proud of that show. And we didn't.
I am proud of you for that show, because I have not seen very many people on the left. There have definitely been some notable exceptions that I've actually been surprised on, but generally speaking, the narrative on the left is that he's just a mass murderer. So I'm very proud of you as well for being able to take a look at the video evidence that's right in front of your face, be able to read the actual Wisconsin state law, and come to the determination that, yeah, this is probably self-defense. And now, of course, a jury has acquitted him of any wrongdoing in that, so we can actually say it was definitively self-defense.
Well, thank you. I sincerely appreciate that. I'm not. The show we did on biases was enlightening, and it's like, even the expert in biases. Yep, I still have them, and you just try to do your best you can, and thank you. I'm glad. I like it when In Time can cover something like that well, and I think we did. So, thank you. I appreciate that, Xander. That means a lot. So, Titan, LOL, I can ask Tony Designs to step back into... No, Titan? Yeah, there you go. That's the real reason Titan... I think that's the reason Titan's got a position for life is because, yeah, if he goes, I know who's gonna fill his place. It's gonna be Tony, who got nothing bad to say about him. Good guy, but, it's just like, destroyer of worlds, I guess he is. Yeah, no, we're good with Titan. We're good. We'll keep Titan. Thank you. So let's see. The discovery of
Probably Tepe.
Oh, okay. Possibly the Sphinx and Pyramid may be older than we think. Oh my God, that would be. That would be interesting. I want a 120 millimeter artillery piece for self-defense. Can you even use that in self-defense?
Well, I mean, I guess you could. I mean, you could use anything in
a little
self-defense.
And if a guy asks for
I
your
don't know
wallet,
how
you could.
accurate you would be.
Well, I mean, you could sit there. I mean, if somebody tries to take your wallet, I suppose you could just sit there and say, you know, okay, like, could you try to take my wallet from in front of the howitzer? You know, but
Well, I mean, you're not going to carry it around.
yeah, so you got to make sure you get mugged when you're actually at your howitzer.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, Amy, good to see you. We've already been talking to your show already too. Anyway, I just lost my. Oh, actually, I should show you guys all that. But before I go, anyone who wants to call in, the number is down at the bottom right there. If you want to call in, number is also pinned at the top. It is 1-800 1-800. I always start with the 1-800. We did have a 1-800 number, but I don't have one anymore. It's 406 4 in time. And again, let me just find out. I dropped my lighter, so I got this. Here we go. Just because, I guess part of my survival kit is this. It is a USB lighter, and you just plug it in, charge it on a USB. It doesn't require any gasoline, and you know, you can even charge it on AA batteries. And it's a plasma lighter, so you can see there. There you go. When it lights, yeah, that thing can light just about anything. I don't know. It's one of my really cool. It's a little big to have just on a. But that is my entirety of my survival kit. You think I'm going to be okay, Xander, if the world goes to hell in a handbasket? I got a lighter.
Sure. Yeah, you're going to make it.
Perfect. Good. I knew it. I want to tell my wife. She was all like laughing at me.
Well, I'm laughing too, but I mean, I don't want to hurt your feelings.
Well,
I don't want to be considered a mean person.
Okay. Out of curiosity, in your calculations about being a mean person, did it cross your mind that you're telling people live that you're laughing at me?
Yeah, because I'm telling them, not you.
I can hear it. You're aware. I mean, and I'm aware we don't have like the largest audience in the world. By that, I don't mean like weight wise. I mean like, you know, I think I'm digging myself into a bigger hole here. Yeah. All right. So you and my wife have something in common. You never met her, actually, did you? No, you did. Yeah, you didn't. I think she was. No. You came up and
you were afraid. Yeah. You were very afraid and very cautious and tentative when this crazy ass gun-toting right-wing nut job showed up in your hometown and called you up and said, "Guess what, bucko? I'm here."
Yeah. Did you have your AR-15 when you called? You must have, because it's. I mean, no, you didn't. You didn't have it. Nope. Okay. So you see, I had nothing to be afraid of. Those of you who missed it, we started a show. His camera's off. Camera comes on. There he is. He's stroking the AR-14. He's just stroking it. And I was just like, "What are you doing?" He goes, "Isn't this what all you liberals think we conservatives do with our guns?" And I was just like, thought about it for a minute. I was like, "Yeah, that is what we think you do with your guns. Actually, that's a pretty accurate representation." Yeah, you got me on that. Yeah, you can murder people.
Now I'm actually immortalized on YouTube stroking a gun. So yeah, that's the thing that happened.
Oh dear Lord! Well, and you said you wanted to get a photo of me. We should do it. I talk about it. You know, you said you were gonna have me like carry it or not load it. That would be a really bad idea. But have me like touch it or something.
This may need to actually go to OnlyFans. Just listen to what it sounds like if you don't know what the context of this is. You're going to bring it over and you're like, have me touch it or hold it? Don't make me stroke it, though.
Don't make me stroke your gun. Okay. No, this is yeah. I think we're all, you know what? If we're going to be having this conversation, and we either need more super chats or we need to be on OnlyFans, because this is, we would, at this point, we would be getting paid more money on OnlyFans than we would just putting this on YouTube. So
that is true.
Yeah. So no,
I wanted to, next time I came through, I wanted to stop, and I told you that I was going to force you into holding up the AR in like a port arms fashion and say, "Look, I've converted Nick. He's now a gun nut."
There are plenty of people who, a number of people, both because of the Rittenhouse thing and just because I've gotten into a number of people, arguments with a number of liberals, and they misrepresent the conservative positions, which, as you know, is a pet peeve of mine. I think if your position is right, you shouldn't have to misrepresent the position of the other side. And so I correct them. They're like, "Oh my God, you're for guns now?" It's just like, well, I'm not for guns, but I understand the arguments a lot better. And my position, well, it's hard to explain. I have a lot more respect for
I think the best
that
way to
position.
explain it.
Yes, please.
I think the best way to explain it is that there's been some arguments made that are very difficult to counter in today's environment. That your ultimate goal would still be you want private ownership, and also by extension, if private ownership is bad, also you'd want law enforcement to not be armed as well. So you'd like to remove firearms from the general population entirely, and you still want that. You still think that's the best route to go, and you still think we should work towards that goal. But at this very moment, that's not really a possibility. And because it's not a possibility, you either make people victims or you allow them to have guns. So which route do you take?
Yeah, I think it's not as simple as let's just take all their guns. It's never been that simple on some fronts. There have been exceptions anyway. My father, when he was in Colorado, had to have a firearm because he lived in his house was rather rural, and you could bump into a bear out there. And it's just like you had to be able to defend yourself against wildlife. And I was just like, we don't normally think of that, but that is a there are people for whom that's a legit problem. There are people who just have to be armed, unfortunately. So, how long until we see the follow-up video for the Rittenhouse trial? I don't know that we're going to do a follow-up to the Rittenhouse trial. And I don't know, Ms. Anner, if you've got any thoughts on it, but I think we said what we had to say. What Legal Eagle had to say, and I thought that was an important distinction, is I'd like to say I believe our position was right. I don't know that we were proven right if the position is that it was absolutely self-defense. But we were correct in as much as a bunch of reasonable people said that the state had failed to prove that Rittenhouse had committed murder. So, there's some room in between those two positions, but in either case, that's anyone who says that there was no doubt that he had committed murder. Now the jury didn't agree with that. So I don't know. I'd be curious to know what you think that the follow-up should be. Is Andrew, you got any thoughts on that?
That the state made an absolutely horrible case, really didn't have a case, and they, due to political and social pressures, they brought a case anyway, and they lost. And I think they lost very terribly. So, to get 0 convictions at all on anything, they just had a super weak case, and it ended up where it ended up. I mean, it is kind of hard to say that that the case proved that he was acting in self-defense, because that was just simply his defense, and that part wasn't actually on trial, so they didn't have to prove any of that. They just had to prove that he was not guilty of murder. So a lot of people are making a lot of the.
I do think that the biggie, one of the biggies, is how could that gun possibly have been legal? Especially if it had been a pistol, it wouldn't have been. And the reality is, I think it was, and I think that's why the charge got thrown out, was because it just was legal. There was also arguments that, hey, the gun was provocative. It cannot be provocative. Legally, that gun is not provocative. If he had that gun in Massachusetts and was standing in front of a grocery store with that gun, that would be provocative. That would be provocative. Massachusetts citizens haven't seen that kind of thing before. And even if it was an otherwise legal gun, just carrying it out in the open like that would be provocative as all hell. But in Wisconsin, because Wisconsin is a open carry state, by definition, if it's an open carry state, carrying a weapon in public is not and cannot be provocative. And the reason is because the law is open carry. The law is it's legal to do it. So in terms of that gun being provocative towards any act of self-defense, no, it not in an open carry state. And the problem is you have to realize there's a different culture there. And they're much more used to guns than I am, and than a number of people have been sitting in and opining on this thing and sit there and say, just having the gun is provocative. By the way, a lot of other people there were armed, and they weren't attacked. They weren't attacked. So this argument that, well, having the gun is its own provocation, and because he had the gun, it was okay for Rosenbaum to attack him. No, period. No, end of discussion. Both because the law says he can carry it openly. It's an open carry state, ergo it cannot be provocative. Legally, just can't be. But that aside, okay, why is it Rittenhouse carrying that was provocative, but other people carrying similar firearms were not? I don't know.
Well, and the issue with that, too, is that and this is something that I've seen a lot of people kind of messing this up. There is a difference between what might actually happen in reality and what the law says. Something can be perfectly legal under the law, and you could still say it's provocative, but the law says it isn't. So we can say that going to a charged event where the previous night had broken out into quite a lot of violence, showing up with guns and saying, we're protecting property against people who were kind of intent on destroying property, that is a provocative act. So you can say, yeah, they were provoking people by their very presence. Of course, they have every legal right to do it. And you're kind of ending up with the, what is the something veto, where you're being held hostage by somebody else's actions, bad actions, because you're not willing to do bad actions. I can't remember the name of what it's actually called.
It escapes me.
But yeah, I can't. There's a name for it where it's like people who are willing to do violence can hold other people with good intentions hostage to their desires because they don't want to escalate the situation. So they have a little bit more free reign to do things. So anyway, throwing all of that into one little situation like that, and the fact that they were able to get Rittenhouse alone, it's like the reason the other people weren't attacked is because there were several of them together and they could cover each other. And Rosenbaum believed that he had Rittenhouse. This is speculation from what I've seen and what I've heard in testimony. Obviously, I'm not a mind reader, so I don't know any of this for fact. This is my speculation, what I think is likely to have occurred. And the fact that Rosenbaum was already mentally unstable, he got him alone and figured that he was bigger and bad enough to be able to take him out, and had desired to take him out to kind of be his macho proven point, and it didn't end up working out that way. So, and most of the other people who were armed, because there was a whole bunch of people armed there, most of them were armed with firearm or with pistols. So you didn't really get to see exactly how many firearms were there, but there were a lot of them there.
There absolutely were. So we do have a caller. I'm going to let the caller in just a second. But the other thing is, and I think you and I both agree on this, he should not have been there. Period. Shouldn't have been there. And his parents should have. Yeah.
Yeah. You agree with that he shouldn't have been there, that was a bad idea? I agree.
Yep.
He shouldn't have been there. That was a bad idea. Kyle Rittenhouse agrees it was a bad idea and he shouldn't have been there. He's said that openly, that if he had it to do it again, he would not have gone. So, yeah, it was a bad idea for him to go.
But that doesn't allow people to attack him. That kind of,
correct.
He still had the right
to
be there. Exactly. He had the right to be there anyway, even though it was a poor choice. And that's the other one that I hear a lot of is, well, he shouldn't have been there, so let's convict him. Wait. If he did everything else right, and the only thing that he did wrong was poor judgment in being there, but that's a judgment call and it wasn't illegal, you cannot sit there and say you're going to put him in jail for the rest of his life for a bad judgment call that wasn't even illegal. If that's the linchpin to it, and that's been the linchpin repeatedly. So let's we're gonna have a caller in. So let me let this caller in here. And all right, caller, you're in. And what's your name?
Hey, it's Jim. How's it going, Nick? I'm sorry, is that 𝐒𝐨𝐮𝐿?
𝐒𝐨𝐮𝐭𝐭𝐞𝐫.
I'm sorry, you're breaking up on me.
𝐒𝐨𝐮𝐿.
Yeah, call me anything but late for dinner.
𝐒𝐨𝐮𝐿. Late for dinner. Okay, well, that's your new name.
Well, no, no. Listen, you have to be. I need you to please, when you call him, be respectful. He said, don't call him that, so we call him right wing nutcase.
I get it.
Because he doesn't want to be called late for dinner. So right wing nutcase.
Okay.
There you go. Thank
you got to throw the gun part in there somewhere.
Oh, gun carrying right wing nut job.
Nutcase.
Right, a gun carrying right wing nut job. That is his. You know what? I can actually. I can change his name in the title there. So let me get on that just so that we have that accurate. So okay, well, Jim, welcome. We're basically talking Rittenhouse. Yeah.
Hey, thanks, man. By the way, fan of what you do, so keep it up.
Oh, thank you very much. It means a lot to me. So thank you.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're
we're talking about the Crowell Rittenhouse case. Is that
yes, sir?
Appropriate?
Yeah.
You can talk about anything you'd like to.
I guess. Oh, yeah, that's fine. I'm kind of all over. I can be all over the place if you want me to. I guess I just want to make sure I understood this right, because I kind of came in at the tail end of what you guys were talking about, which wrong place, really the wrong place, the wrong time, and all that fun stuff, right? Wrong uniform, to be said. And that it's kind of how everything turned to transpire. But that doesn't negate self-defense. I don't know if I caught that part or not.
Yes, yeah, that's essentially right.
Okay. So yeah, I think I would even be in agreement with that. I don't. Unfortunately, it was a terrible situation to be in, but it doesn't negate his right to self-defense.
And the reality is, you can even be committing a crime, and it doesn't negate your right to self-defense. It can, but it doesn't necessarily negate your right to self-defense. It depends on the crime, and it depends on whether or not that crime was provocative and provoked whatever the attack was. If you're doing a crime and you are attacked independently of that, you didn't provoke it, you still have a right to self-defense. Just because you're picking somebody's pocket doesn't mean somebody has a right to come out and blow your head off.
Yeah, and if I'm not mistaken, part of that too is something to deal with. You must retreat, or you must kind of fall back, or something like that. And I think retreating and saying friendly is a kind of an indicator.
Well, that's dependent on state law, at least in the United States. It's dependent upon state law. For example, in Wisconsin, there is no duty to retreat in law. So you're not required. They don't specifically have stand your ground laws, but they also do not have duty retreat laws. So they, in effect, have stand your ground, even though it's not codified in law. Some states have actually gone the further distance, saying that you have the right to stand your ground and not have to retreat. So there isn't anything in the law stating, the self-defense laws, stating that you must retreat before you're entitled to use lethal force to defend yourself.
Okay. Yeah.
Some states do.
I know that it varies by state. Yeah, I know some, like, what is it, Castle or something like that, to the effect. And
Castle Doctrine.
I'm a lawyer, and
Castle Doctrine and Stand Your Ground doctrines are two different things. Though Stand Your Ground is an extension of Castle Doctrine, but they are independent. Yeah, Castle is within your own home. That is your castle, and that you have every right to defend it.
So for example, I've been. No, please.
Okay. I guess in the Rittenhouse case, the two counter arguments, I don't know if it's two or not, but counter arguments I've run into is he shouldn't have been there, and his mom should be, tried, which is that's not. I'm going to throw that out, right? And then the other part of that is, he was committing a crime by carrying a weapon, which, if I'm not mistaken, it was a loophole for him.
Well, it wasn't really a loophole. It was designed. It was designed in law to be the way that it was, but it wasn't intended to be used the way that he used it, because the law was put in place to protect 16 to 17-year-olds, well, technically 14 to 17-year-olds, to be able to be in possession of a rifle in order to go hunting. So that was the original purpose, but the law didn't specify. It was a oversight on the actual law. They didn't specify that it was for hunting purposes. And the way that they wrote that second law, which is the whole reason that it was dismissed in court, was because in order to, because there's the minor in possession of a dangerous weapon, but they made an exception for rifles and shotguns. Provided they weren't short-barreled rifles or short-barreled shotguns. And then there's a second part in there that you have to be in compliance with, which is I think they might have made a mistake because it doesn't make a lot of sense the way that it was written. Because there's two other statutes, and these were for hunting regulations, and you had to be in violation of both of them because they used "and." So you had to violate this and this in order to be guilty of minor in possession of a dangerous weapon. Well, one of those statutes only applies to 14 to 16-year-olds. Or 14 and 15-year-olds. It doesn't apply to 16 and 17-year-olds. So it's like if you have to be in violation of both of those statutes, if you're 16 or 17, you're automatically not in violation of both of them because one of them doesn't even apply to you. So it's impossible for a 16 or 17-year-old to be in violation of both of those simultaneously. And so therefore, as long as your rifle or your shotgun has at least a 16-inch barrel and I think a total of a 26-inch length, then a 16 or 17-year-old is perfectly legal to carry a rifle or shotgun
openly.
Any place that rifles or shotguns, openly. In any place that rifles or shotguns are legally allowed to be carried by anyone. There are some other areas where school zones, courthouses, things like that, bars. There's some other restrictions to carrying guns in general, but as far as him being able to just go out into a public place and carry a rifle, according to the law, he is perfectly legal to do so.
As long as he doesn't do it with a handgun. So he can have a shotgun legally. He cannot have a handgun. And I think it does feel like a loophole, and I think it certainly wasn't intended to be used this way, and it's going to be rewritten if they're not already working on it. But he clearly knew what the law was and had worked very hard to be in compliance with it. He couldn't buy the gun, so he didn't buy it. His uncle bought it. He also couldn't store it, so his uncle stored it.
Actually, I believe it was his father. His father, I believe, bought it.
Okay. So he was in complete compliance with it. He knew what it was, and then it also had no restrictions on. He could carry it anywhere he wanted to, even though, as long as he had a valid hunting license, he could carry it where he wanted to. So once that gun is completely legal, even if it wasn't legal, it'd have other. Like I said, the legal breakdown of it I thought was really quite good. But once he had it. Once it was completely legal, that makes any ability to nail him on anything much, much harder because he was in legal possession of a weapon in a place that he was legally allowed to be. He should not have been there, but
that just makes it. Yeah, it just makes it clear in the law, at least, because just because you're in possession of an illegal weapon doesn't negate your right to self-defense using that said weapon. You may be guilty of a weapons charge, but you can still be not guilty of homicide by self-defense, even if like a felon who's prohibited from possessing a firearm has a firearm. He's guilty of possessing a firearm, but say somebody tries to kill him just because he's walking down the street and he uses the firearm to defend himself. He can be found not guilty of murder by means of self-defense, even though he was not legally allowed to be in possession of the firearm. So just because it's an illegal weapon doesn't prohibit you from using the illegal weapon in self-defense, legitimate self-defense.
Well, and that's one of the issues about the law.
Yep, I think I agree on all that.
Okay. So you agree, and I also want to hear if there was anything else you wanted to discuss. But I find the law fascinating, in part because my father was a lawyer. My BAs were in philosophy and psychology, but philosophy was philosophy of religion and philosophy of law. And people think the law is about morality and imposing our morality. No, it's got very little to do with morality. And people think it's about right and wrong. It's got very little to do with right and wrong, and it actually has almost nothing to do with justice. Those are odd concepts in the law once you start to understand how the law works. But at least fairness is a principle that they try to have in the law. And what that means is if you're following the law, then you're following the law, and the law should apply equally to everybody. So when you see a situation where somebody does something that really seems immoral and seems disgusting and seems like it shouldn't be permitted, but was by the law. If it was by the law, then it was legal, and you can change the law, but you can't get them for it after the fact. And there are a lot of very good reasons for that, but the law is really nothing much more than a series of codes, the ethics as opposed to perhaps to morality. And when you understand that, then you got to take some of the emotion out of it as to what you'd like to see happen versus what should happen in terms of the law. And we can't just sit there and say that the law is going to be whatever people want it to be. And, okay, the consensus could be that he should be thrown in jail forever. And even if that's the consensus, the question is, what does the law say? And that's as long as we have that, hopefully we don't have tyrannies and we don't have, then our democracy means something. We start to lose our democracy the second we kill all the lawyers, as it were. So, yeah, I don't know. So you said that makes sense. Do you have any other thoughts on that or anything else you wanted to talk about?
Well, you kind of, I think it's a perfect kind of segue because you definitely outlined something I was thinking out loud, but didn't say it because I know we have this weird delay thing that happens. But the law is definitely not moral, right? It's anything but. And I guess maybe I'm running into something or an observation, and maybe your guys' input is it because we make this assumption that the law is moral or something to that effect that now we are moving into if you commit a crime, you're no longer innocent until proven guilty, you're just guilty.
Is that all of you? Yeah,
I think that's the question mark.
Oh, is Xander, are you still there?
Yes, I'm still here.
Oh, I was wondering, I mean, I can take that, or you
Sorry, did you say something to me?
Oh, yeah, I said, why don't you take that if you'd like?
No, Yeah, okay. We have, there's a couple of issues. One, some morality is pretty subjective. So laws, when they put laws together, it's kind of like, well, this is what the majority of people think that we should, make it illegal to do. So it's not necessarily reflective of morality. It can be, but it's not required to be. And oftentimes it fails to be. So when you look at convicting somebody and saying, well, are they, first the law enshrines, and I think that we're kind of forgetting this, especially in the social arena today, that people are given the presumption of innocence until they are proven to be guilty. I believe it was Jefferson or possibly Madison. I'm suddenly drawing a blank on exactly which one. But one of the founders specifically said it is better that a guilty man go free than we convict an innocent man. That's why they made such a high bar to convicting somebody, and then we give them the presumption of innocence. So our social society today has kind of done away with that, and we now have mob justice. And so, they're essentially, I think you're guilty until you can prove you're innocent. So, we're seeing a kind of a dangerous shift with that, because as soon as you get rid of the presumption of innocence until proven guilty, and that, we decide on whether somebody should be punished or not simply based off of what the mob believes versus what the law says, we have a disintegration of the rule of law, and we're now ruled by men, not laws, and that's how countries collapse. So, it's very important that we make sure that people understand that, we need to look at the law, and we need to give that presumption of innocence until we can actually prove a case that they're guilty. And we've lost, by and large, that ideology in at least the public sphere, the online sphere. I just saw very few people saying out there, hey, let's get all of the facts together. They're going to make the case, and then we're going to see what it is. No, there were so many people, oh, he's guilty, he's this. Nobody really wanted to look at the evidence. And so many people were just stating things about this case that are blatantly untrue. So it's like, it's clear you haven't looked at, even bothered to do the superficial thing of just look at the video of the entire event. Because you start saying these certain talking points that happen quite a lot, and it's like, you clearly didn't actually watch this, because if you did, you would see that that's a completely false claim. But so many people don't seem to care. They're like, look, I just feel, I mean, I've had so many conversations online, and it's gotten to the point that I can't really just engage with all these people anymore because there's so many of them. They're like, I didn't really care what the law says. I feel that he's guilty. I feel that what he did was wrong. Therefore, he should be convicted. And if you get too many people in the population, the general population that genuinely feel that way, your republic is in danger of collapse.
Well, that's mob justice, and that's what leads to lynchings. And I'll point out that, by the way, both sides did this. The left did this worse, but the right's been doing it too. According to the right, he is a hero. He is this, guy who went out there to save lives and protect. Oh, give me a break. He wasn't an EMT, and he said, I'm an EMT. He was able to provide some medical services, but he wanted to be a hero, and he had the hero complex, and he thought he was going to be Batman, and he was being a vigilante, and he shouldn't be doing that. He shouldn't have been there. And anybody who says he should have been there, and there are people on the right who are like, he's a hero, and we should know. No, last thing you should do is be rewarded or thought of positively for going there. But he has become this narrative for gun rights and for people standing up and defending themselves against the mob and defending property. No, he is not that. And he's the absolute wrong poster boy for that. He fucked up. I was going to say because he fucked up, people died. Maybe not. I think Rosenbaum would have gone after somebody that night. He was already trying to go after people, and he was being separated and pulled out. It was when he was alone, and there was nobody who could hold him back that there ended up being a problem. If it hadn't been Rittenhouse, could have been somebody else. So we don't know. Could have, would have. We don't know what would have happened if he hadn't been there. But he shouldn't have been there. And then the left narrative. I mean, they're still saying, people are still saying he went there to shoot black people. You know what? He had plenty of opportunities to shoot people, and he didn't until I would have thought my life was in danger if I were him. So, I think both narratives fail. And so the question is, how do you, the jury is basically, unless you watch the whole trial, the jury is the only one who saw all the evidence. The rest of us are going by our news choice our preferences, and those are going to lean towards the ones we trust, but those are the ones we trust are the ones that are going to be ideologically closest to us. I absolutely trust the New York Times more than I trust any number of other papers. And the New York Times, by the way, has mostly gotten this right from what I can tell, but plenty of left-leaning sources absolutely have not. I've always been a fan of MSNBC, and it's been really disheartening to see some of the mistakes, just falsehoods that they've said. I was just like, we know it's not true. It's been hard for me to believe. As somebody pointed out, why have I been going after the left more than the right on this? Because I trust the left more. And when I realize they get something wrong, I get hurt by that more. When the right gets something wrong, I was like, that's just the right being the right, It's the right and their lies and all this other stuff. When I catch the left doing it, that hurts. That really bugs me. Because I was like, if I can't trust you guys, but Carl Sagan stood in front of the New York Public Library and said, there are 4 million books behind me. You can't read them all. So what do? You have to figure out which ones you're going to read. And that's going to be based on people you trust, who've already read books, who already have telling you which ones are good. And hopefully you get, you do your best to work your way through it. We all have our own biases, and we all kind of have to try to come up to a conclusion. I didn't really care about Rittenhouse until I really thought that there was a chance that the media got this wrong. And then in my view, the story became the fact that the media is turning him into something he's not on both sides. They each have a story with it. That was scary. And that needed to be reported on. And that was one of the big reasons why I wanted to cover it. Because it's just like, we can't, we have to be, if we don't have truth, we have nothing else. We have absolutely nothing else. This fighting over facts. Let's at least get the facts right, even if you don't like the facts. I don't like the fact that gun was legal. That's stupid. It was a fact, though. It's absolutely a fact. Anyways, I don't know. What do you think?
Well, I think where I would kind of, I don't want to get too bogged down in semantics, because I think we can easily do that, right? Because one thing you kind of said just kind of made me think. I think we have to have some charity towards people's motives at some level, right? And so to say that Kyle is a vigilante implies in the hero complex aspect of it, I don't know if I would agree with that. But understand kind of where you're coming from a little bit from that perspective. Now, as far as the media, yes, there's a problem, and we have a significant issue with reliability of our media, and I think that's a potential symptom of maybe market forces. Maybe just because they're still they're competing. It's ratings. It's like the measurements are what drives their revenue, right? And so how they're being measured, just like any system, is going to relate to whatever stories they push, and that's problematic. But yeah, the trial overall is interesting, and I think the overall sentiment in America that is changing is very reminiscent of what is it, the Department of Public Safety in France, in the Revolution, in the French Revolution, and even more so in 1920s Russia. So that's kind of going back to 𝐒𝐨𝐿, or the right-wing nutcase, right? Something like that. That is the crippling of our
right-wing nutcase. Let's please be respectful. It's
gun-toting right-wing nutcase.
You got it. Thank you.
Gun-toting,
at least get it right.
Right-wing nutcase. I'm sorry.
Okay,
I need to write it down. But that is the scary part of all this, and it's just the scary part of all of this.
And what I'd like to do real quick is remind I'm going to interrupt and remind anyone who wants to join that we can actually have multiple people calling in at the same time, and we can have as many as we want. We can put them in or out as we need. So if you want to call in, the lines are still open. Call in. You can join the conversation here. The number is down below me. It's also pinned at the top. You were saying, 𝐒𝐨𝐿.
I think that the advent of social media, especially the power that can grant to the general population, has had a bit of a chilling effect. I know it kind of gets into the whole cancel culture, but it goes even beyond that. Not just canceling somebody. Mm-hmm. There's been several instances where the mob has set out to try and destroy somebody's life. It's not good enough that they're just no longer allowed to put their views out on say the YouTubes or just out there in social media. There's been several cases where that's not even good enough. They start calling employers and harassing them, talking about how bad this person is. I mean, they set out, and some people have even come out and said that, yeah, my goal is to get them to commit suicide because they're not even worthy of life, being alive on this planet, and we're going to do everything we can to destroy their entire lives. And that's really chilling. That people can be that callous and decide, look, there's a human being with a lot of other aspects to them besides this one thing that you may disagree with them on, and that you're going to try and destroy their lives because you don't like their stances on things. These are not good steps to be taking, and we seem to be taking them with aplomb, and it's worrisome.
I do think that's a
and
so I'm sorry. So we do have the way that you're calling in. The way that you're calling in, there is extra lag. So I do apologize, okay. And there's try next time to get that sorted out. But that is a huge concern. Is that we identify people by a single. I forget who it was. I don't think it was. It may have been Chris Rock, who was talking about. I think it was Chris Rock, and one side of his family is white, and one uncle that he dearly loved, and he loved this uncle until he found out that his uncle said something racist, and it took him a very long time to just sort of realize that he could still care about his uncle and still love his uncle, and realize that he was a product of this generation, and that he was too old to change, and just try to work with him as much as possible, but see him as a human being who was flawed too. And I think now we have this if we see something that this identity politics, where if somebody says something racist or is racist, that's all there is to them, and that invalidates their lives in every other way. And I find that appealing. I find that appealing because it appeals to my sense of righteous indignation and that I'm better than them. And I find it appealing because I like the idea of me running around and being judgmental towards people, because that necessarily elevates you. I've often said too, and I have to say this, the other side, the same is true. I have to believe that it's fun to be in the KKK, because the only way to do it is to assume your superiority to other human beings, to most human beings, and not just people of color, but other whites who don't recognize the obviousness that that's got to be so, it's got to make you feel uncommonly good. I have to believe, but we have to fight against that and talk about what's true. And what I've found is what's true is people are far more complex, and I have to be as forgiving of other people as I can be, because there are times I kind of want that forgiveness myself, and I think that's what it means to be a human being. Anyways, I did cut you off, so please, I'll give you some time on the lag there, and let us know your thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, no issues. Lag is lag, it happens. So, the element, I guess the first point I'd bring up is there's a lot of courage behind keyboards, to say the least, right? And these keyboards are, unfortunately, well, it's quite sad, because people seem to not be able to confront other people in a meaningful way, or have a dialogue, and they've forgotten I think these are compounding issues, right? How to actually have a long form conversation and get to the bottom of things and seek truth in more ways than one, because we're limited to how many characters, right? Being concise is useful, don't get me wrong, but there's also that aspect of charity and trying to understand the other person's viewpoint. It makes it hard. So then when we look at the I guess the idea of forgiveness and a little bit of grace, right? That is a whole nother ballgame. And as a fellow historian, or I'm a layman historian, it's very hard to judge someone on today's standards by any means and have them survive the cancel culture. I just don't understand how people can do that unless you have a very strong bias a particular way from either left or right-leaning politics. I mean, it doesn't matter how you spin it. You can find any person in history and completely destroy them and cancel them. You can find anyone today and cancel them as well. And that is the dangerous thing.
I've said this before, and I've gotten some pushback, and somebody had made an argument that actually was worth considering. I've unfortunately now forgotten what the argument was, but my position on one thing, Dawkins. When Dawkins said his comments, or he tweeted his comments, he demonstrated that he's not a humanitarian. I don't think you can really say what he said if he meant it the way it certainly looked like he did. I don't think you're a humanitarian. So I understand why people said, well, he shouldn't get this humanitarian award. But they had already awarded it to him, and I'm not sure taking it away was necessarily the answer either. And certainly doing this, quote, cancel culture. People sit there and say, well, why are you objecting to the cancel culture? You can't cancel him, and he can still go on any show anytime he wants to. That's absolutely true, but that's not the problem. The problem is he is now dug in. He is never going to admit he was wrong. And frankly, I think he's probably a good guy. From what I've seen, he's probably a good guy. I think he would want to know that he's wrong. But everybody, and this is what I talk about and this is going to get into that Seth Andrews conversation that we're going to have about how to better the conversation. If you're an anti-theist and you're having a discussion with a theist, running around telling them that their views are idiotic and childish is a great way to get them to never change those views, because they want to prove you wrong. I would so much rather have seen somebody sit down, and Al Sharpton, who I really detest, but when Don Imus came out and said all sorts of very racist things, Al Sharpton said, you know what? Let's not go after him. Let's just have a conversation with him. And he just had a conversation with him. If you could tell me I could have any one guest on the planet any one guest on the planet, there are two that I would have a very hard time choosing between. President Barack Obama would be the first, and that's also a personal one. But aside from the historical nature, that's a personal one because I worked on his campaign, and I did so for personal reasons, and I love the guy. So that would be one. The second one would be Daryl Davis, who most people have never heard of, and he's not a big name in the sense of Obama. But what he did was remarkable. A black man who went to KKK rallies and treated them with dignity and respect. You can sit there and say, well, why should I have to do that? You don't have to do that. That's what makes it important. That's what makes treating other people as important. And he's collected, 200 Klan robes of people who said, wow, he's my enemy and he's treating me with respect. That goes back to Dr. Reverend Martin Luther King Jr., goes back to Gandhi before him, and the fact that human beings actually have a very hard time hating people who treat us with at least basic common courtesy. That is a powerful weapon, and we have forgotten that, and we've thrown it away, and we've thrown it away because it's more fun to get indignant and say, we're going to cancel you and we're going to teach you a lesson for we're all becoming Karens. I would rather have seen people sit and talk to Dawkins because I think he'd actually want to know, but you cannot have that conversation anymore. You can't cancel him. He's still going to do it. So why did anyone bother trying? Why instead didn't they say, why don't you come on our show, whatever show? It doesn't have to be my show. He's not going to come on my show. Pick a show, somebody who is a big name, who wants to have this discussion with him. Have on somebody who's going to treat him with dignity and respect, but say, here's what you're missing, because he's a man of education and I think he cares. It's just about reaching him. And you don't do that by canceling him.
I would agree with that statement. There's two responses I think you can have with people, and also kind of with cancel culture. You can ignore it. Like, you can absolutely ignore it. What was it? Mark Wahlberg. They tried to cancel him, and he just ignored it. And just it's like, that's nice. Would I prefer a conversation? Absolutely. At some point, though, there has to be kind of like, you kind of have to draw a line and be like, is this worth my time to engage?
Oh, I agree. And, there are
you
people
hear me?
who... Yep.
Okay.
And I completely agree. I do want to hear what Xandring has to say on the topic, though.
I think if you're Mark Wahlberg, you have the luxury of being able to just ignore it. There's certainly an aspect of, what kind of following do you have yourself as to whether you can actually ignore some of this stuff. I think that engaging in it tends to perpetuate it. But some people, simply ignoring it isn't going to have any effect whatsoever. And I also think that in the broader context, simply ignoring something like that is not the proper way to go about it, because, just like the saying, in order for evil to triumph, good people must only do nothing. It's like when you see something that is, on its face disgusting, and I think that trying to destroy people's lives over, especially something like a political opinion or some sort of, philosophical stance that they have or belief that they have, and you try and destroy their life because of it, I find that disgusting and reprehensible. And it needs to be, people need to stand up against it and say, no, this is bullshit. And this is a terribly dangerous thing to be doing, and we should stop it. We should know better at this point. And we apparently don't. So, I don't think that just ignoring it is, ignore it and the problem goes away. Well, that only works sometimes with some kinds of bullies. So other bullies, you have to stand up and say, no, this is wrong, and I'm not standing for it anymore. And that's the only way that you're eventually going to win. So, yeah, it's great if you're Mark Wahlberg and you can just ignore the whole thing and move on with your life. Most of us can't. So, when they come for you, you're suddenly going to care about who's actually going to stand up and say, no, this is wrong, whether they agree with you philosophically, politically, or not. Everybody should be standing up and saying, no, this is wrong.
Well, and our value...
I think that's a decision
please.
that both of us could... Okay, yeah, I think that's a decision that could be made. And the reason why I think is, one, is our attention spans are pretty limited, right? Like, especially like the news culture or something like that. So they're only going to come after you for so long. Now you're going to have persistent people, like, and I'm not going to get like say no to that. Like there will always be persistent people, and then there's also the people who are just in it with the moment, and to kind of, I don't know if I'm agreeing or disagreeing. I think I'm agreeing on conditions, and that's the hard part, is trying to figure out what resources I need to dedicate to dealing with cancel culture effectively, if that makes any sense.
I think that's a good
Yeah,
question.
I mean, how much time do you want to put into this? You know, it's one of those, well, I've got a lot of other things going on in my life, and I can't spend a whole bunch of time on this. But you don't necessarily have to put a whole bunch of time into it. You know, I mean, you're definitely going to, when they come after you, whether you want to or not, you're going to end up having a lot of time invested into this. So, you know, when they come up after somebody else, it's not like you have to spend a whole hell of a lot of time about it. You can say, no, what they're doing is wrong, regardless of whether you agree with what they said or not. Trying to cancel their entire life is wrong, and then move on, you know, and not buy into it, not perpetuate it, you know, and just anytime somebody comes up and says, you know, well, they need to be kicked off of Twitter, or they need to be kicked out of YouTube, and you're like, no, that's wrong. We shouldn't be doing that. And then move on. It doesn't take a whole lot of time investment. It does kind of initially from some more powerful people, you know, but if they get the mass of people behind them saying, you're right, we're not going to do this, this isn't okay, and move on, you know, the kind of canceling people will go away because there won't be enough support for it.
And the thing is, our values only mean something if we stand by them when they're inconvenient. And, you know, I'm not a fan of standing up for the rights of the KKK to speak freely. But I'm really glad when they do it, because it tells me how many people there are that actually believe these things. It tells me just how confident they are in their own beliefs. It's a fantastic bellwether. It tells me who these people are, and then we can deal with the problem. But you put them underground, that's how you end up with mass shootings. What was it? What is it? The technical university shooting, but also the shooting.
Alabama.
Virginia Tech.
Virginia Tech, thank you. But of the last 10 shootings, 9, maybe 8 of them, one of the key things they said was, now they'll listen to me. Now they're listening to me. When you feel that you're not being heard, that's when people are more likely to resort to violence. And it's not easy to hear these things, and these things cause harm. It's absolutely harmful. What Dawkins said was harmful. So, and that's what makes it so that you can justify canceling him, is because it's harmful. But it turns out that the better way to deal with it, and we've known this, anybody who studied this knows this, the better way to deal with it is through dialogue. Does it always work? Nope. But it works better than any alternative. It's a lot like AA in that one. AA, Alcoholics Anonymous, has a 70% recidivism rate, 80% recidivism rate. So people tell me, well, then why does anyone go to AA? Because it's still the best method available. It's got a horrible success rate. It still works better than anything else. And frankly, this kind of approach, it just takes more energy, and that's why people don't want to do it. But I think we've accomplished a lot more with that than we have by trying to tell people that they're not allowed to talk, or that we're not gonna engage. And there's always going to be instances where it fails. There's always going to be instances where it fails catastrophically. You're going to sit there and say, why do we even bother trying to be reasonable? Well, because it's better than the alternative. Again, it's the same as, you know, yeah, sometimes the justice system fails catastrophically too. What's the alternative? Mob justice? I don't think so. So it's not perfect, but that you don't make perfection the enemy of doing it the best you can.
Yeah, I don't think I disagree with anything there. There's definitely a risk you run into by ignoring it. There's definitely a risk of it going underground, all that fun stuff, you know. And so there's a give and a take, and that's why I tried to word it effectively, dealing with it. But if you guys don't mind, there's just something I've been pondering. I'd like your guys' input on this, if you don't mind.
Yeah,
absolutely. I have one thing to say, and then we'll get to whatever you'd like, just to kind of close out that. When it's not just about driving people underground either. when you look at like the Columbine shooters, when you look at the Virginia Tech shooter, and many of the mass shooters, they kind of have that common theme. Well, people are going to listen to me now. This is fairly well documented in the psychological literature. When you start trying to cancel people, and you start taking them out of kind of the general discussion, they start getting to the point where they become completely disenfranchised with the system itself. They no longer have any faith in it. They don't believe in it because it's not been working for them. And they eventually, not in all cases, but in severe cases, they get to the point where they're like, I just hate this system entirely, and I want to watch it burn to the ground. And when that happens, you end up with the Virginia Tech shooting, second most deadly mass shooting in American history. That's what happens when you get to that point. And it doesn't happen in all cases, but when it happens, it's chilling and it's devastating. And we should try to avoid that.
And I want to quickly, I'm going to dive into, I do want to have Jim speak, but there was a question in the live chat, which was a good question, and this will be my piece on it, and then we'll let Jim go, and then I'd like to do maybe 10 more minutes and then start to wrap this up. But well, first of all, Titan said, cancel fascists, I don't mind, and it's going to dovetail into Jason Torn. Isn't canceling someone in some situations appropriate? It really depends on what you mean by canceling, and it depends on what it is you're trying to do. So I think we're going to start to get into nuance. Are there people I would not platform? Yes, but only for one of two reasons. One, for whatever reason, it's off-brand. It's not appropriate for our show, and so we wouldn't put them on. Or two, I or anyone associated with the show and anyone we could get on the show is not capable of offering sufficient pushback on whatever that person is saying. Those are the only two. So we would absolutely bring a Nazi on here, but only I would not be qualified to put. I mean, I'm a reasonably smart guy and I'm good at arguing. I would not consider myself qualified to give the kind of pushback that you would need to do if you were going to put someone like that on here. So we would have to find someone who has engaged with that level of vitriol and that level of it's polite vitriol, but that's a toxic and dangerous person, and you have to treat that with responsibility. And so you then have to make sure that somebody on the show, it is your responsibility to make sure that they are challenged and challenged appropriately. I'm not capable of challenging that, so that's one reason why you haven't seen us do it. But that's the only reason. Because we would be platforming them and giving them a positive platform to get their message across if we didn't. So our responsibility would be, now you could call that canceling. They'd have no platform here because I couldn't give them the pushback that I'd have to. So there's nuance to that, right? They couldn't be on this platform, but we could if I could find somebody who could push back and give the message, that the counter message, successfully. And it's a risk you take, but anyways, there you go. I think I'm talking in a corner. Anyways, Jim. So what were you going to say? And I think you had an answer to this, and or something else you wanted to talk about. And like I said, I'd like to try to wrap this up in about 10 minutes.
Yeah. So I think that opens up the floodgates of other things, but like. I'm not going to touch that because I think I would like to kind of go into this topic, which I think is maybe quickly interesting to kind of dive into, and maybe hopefully lead to some further discussion later on. So this is something that I'm noticing is it seems like in American politics, let's just say the right and the left are fighting their opposing, what is it? So we use
ideologies,
bad words here. Yeah, they're opposing ideology / shadows, right? So, for example, the right's fighting socialism and communism, and the left is fighting fascism. But they're both willing to do both to achieve those means. And we can move this to the fringe argument here, not in the moderate center. But that's if you look at the language, that's kind of what I'm seeing. Love to hear your guys' take on that.
Xander, your thoughts?
I think that when you push out to the fringes, you're going to get people who are radical enough that they're willing to do anything in pursuit of what they believe their ultimate goal is, even embracing the very things that they claim that they're fighting against. because a lot of times those things are effective at getting what they want. So that's why they embrace them. And that should always be pushed back against. I mean, I don't think extremism, unless you're talking about like extreme even extreme charity can sometimes be harmful. So, it's very difficult when you push anything out to the extreme to get any kind of measure of its efficacy or whether or not it's a good thing or not. So we should try and avoid extremes. We've seen throughout history that extremes are generally bad.
I do think the danger of becoming what you behold is always there. I still hang out, and I'd like to sort of get back into sort of the more atheist and or anti-theist communities. But one of the things that I've noticed about a lot of the anti-theist communities is they sit there and say, what we hate most about religion is that they push it on people, and they're making everybody be religious, and they're making everyone follow their rules, and it's dogmatic, and nobody should ever have a dogmatic idea, so I go around trying to deconvert people, even against their wills, because I don't want them to be dogmatic. Well, wait a minute, you're now pushing your views on other people. You're saying that your views that anything that's dogmatic must be eliminated, which isn't even possible. You're pushing that view on to other people. So I think there are ways to have these discussions. I think they're important discussions, but saying you're going to force it on people who, in some cases, if you have a grandmother who's lost her whole family, her children have died, grandchildren are dead, and the only thing that she's holding on to is that, she's going to see them in heaven, and she's in her 80s. Oh, that's a false belief. Are you going to, are you going to try to strip her of that, really? And most won't go that far. And so the next question is, well, what's the line? And in my view, the line is, when are you pushing your beliefs on other people? And as long as, if they're not hurting anyone, it doesn't really matter to me whether somebody's a Christian or any kind of theist. I don't care as long as they're not hurting people with it. So, but John Stuart Mill created that. It was the harm principle, the idea that something should be illegal only if it harms other people. It was a great principle. It was a great idea. But now we've gotten harm, has been watered down to be, well, I heard music that really offended me and I didn't like the music, and that's harm, and that should be illegal now too. Well, yeah. So I don't know. I think that nobody thinks they're a bad person, and everybody is usually they feel that whatever actions they take are justified in the defense of some greater good. And I try to be very, very careful with that, because I don't think there are many horrible, horrible people in the history of the human race that didn't feel that those actions were justified for one reason or another. So I try to watch what I justify in that sense and try to err on the side of civility as much as possible, and realize that I will have the temptation to become what I've beheld, and try not to do that. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, a little bit. Again, it's just an observation that I've kind of noticed in American politics. The right seems to fight against the socialism, communism, isms, that type of stuff, and then the left is extremely devoted to taking on fascism. And I'm not advocating for necessarily horseshoe theory or anything like that. I'm just saying it's just an observation, and we see it in politics. Right wing talking this, left wing talking this, and they all seem to be fighting against kind of those two maybe governmental archetypes is the right word. I don't know. And just wanted your guys' take on that. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, I do think it's, okay, I'm not going to get into horseshoe theory. I think it is different than horseshoe theory, and I do think we all do. I think that was the line originally by Eliot Ness, who said, I've become what I beheld. He was interested in stopping all the crime, all the murder, and all this other stuff, and then found himself engaged in no small measure of it in order to stop it. I don't know what to tell you. It does look to me like the far left is embracing some forms of fascism, but you're going to see that on all sides. I don't think that is a consequence of pushing any one ideology too far in one direction or another. I think that's a consequence of going too far on any ideology. and you can view almost anything, any extreme ideology, extreme atheism or anti-theism, if you wanted to, as a form of fascism. So you're going to see it on the left, you're going to see it on the right. It's just when the left is going to say, when the right does it, it's fascism. When I do it, it's something different. And the right's going to do the same thing, right? Because the right says, well, we don't like big government. We want to save money, but we're going to make sure that we spend more on our military than every other country in the world combined. But that's not big government, right? When we do it, it's not big government. It's big government when the liberals do it and when they want to pay for, health and welfare programs. But when we pay for it, it's necessary spending that doesn't really count. So yeah, it's called hypocrisy. We all do it. Anything else you wanted to?
Fair.
Yep.
I guess I'm good from my end. Again, I know you have a show, and so I'll poke around. You may see me, Nick, on some of the I used to go frequent Amy Newman's show often. Haven't been on in a while. I've been busy. So, but other than that, appreciate it. Thanks for having me on, and I'm going to kind of bounce out and keep up the great work, guys.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah, I'd like to. I tried to do Amy Newman's last night, and I was in the live chat for a little bit, and but then I started having serious technical issues, and it's just like, okay, I'm gonna take a break. Couldn't do that, but I need to spend a little more time there and a little more time in some other communities, because otherwise I get too insular. And as much as I'm enjoying arguing with the Muslims and on their Discord, I don't want to spend too much time doing that and make that just become sort of my wheelhouse or shtick. I need to poke my head out and engage in real life a bit more. So as Andering, let's see, any other thoughts that you've got or anything else you want to hit before we go?
There's a couple of things, like they're scrolling through in the live chat, that I kind of want to engage with, but also people have their opinions, and so sometimes it's not worthwhile getting into it, especially when it bogs down into a whole bunch of stuff that people may not actually really care about. The only thing I'll say is when I was talking about some of the mass shooters, it's not just mass shooters, but the clinical psychology literature on how people get disenfranchised with the system and how they become extreme and cause extreme acts of violence is fairly well documented. There's quite a few prominent psychologists that talk about this situation, and it's not just at the societal level or social media level. Generally speaking, these people are getting disenfranchised in pretty much every aspect of their life, and it starts in a lot smaller areas, and their local surroundings is where it starts. It's just the whole psychology of how people end up getting to the point where they absolutely hate the system and they want to burn it down. This was one of the things that the Columbine shooters talked about. They were pretty upfront and honest when asked about all this stuff. They wanted the entire system to burn to the ground, and they were going to do whatever they could do to try and burn it to the ground. That's not the case in every instance, and a lot of people who become very disenfranchised don't necessarily turn to things like mass murder. But that is a psychological road that we need to be aware of and try and mitigate against. So that's about all I had to say about that.
And there's no one solution to any problem, including this one. Having better discourse isn't the only solution to this. It's not going to fix the whole problem, but I think it's going to make it better. I think there isn't a whole bunch in life that better discourse doesn't make better in general. But I will say this. Michael Macklin was one of the most charming human beings I've ever met. To date, one of the most charming human beings I've ever met. Actually, probably the single most charming human being. A swell guy. Really made you feel like you were the most important person when you were talking to him. Just a sweetheart, and really cared about you, cared about your family. It was just like, what's going on in your life. Also, when I would talk to him, he'd remember who I was, and he'd remember everything I'd ever told him. And you could tell he was really engaged. Now, all these interviews happened with a glass wall between us because he was in jail for murdering 18 people. He told me he had murdered actually probably closer to 28. One of them was a 2-year-old, not a 2-year-old. I keep saying 2-year-old. I don't know why I say that. It was less than 1-year-old infant. And not a particularly swell guy. And none of these things he did because he felt disenfranchised. None of these things he did because anyone made fun of him. None of these things he did for any reason other than he is a sociopath. And nothing is going to change that. He is a guy who had to go to jail as quickly as possible and should have been in jail much sooner, but just was never caught. And horrible, horrible human being. Improving the dialogue is going to do absolutely nothing with this guy but get you trapped because he'll make it sound like it's working because he's a sociopath. He knows what he's doing. He's not stupid. But that's not the kind of person we're talking about, and that's not there are people with whom this will not work. But when you take a look at a lot of the mass shooters who do feel like something broke and they wanted to punish people for how they've been treated, who, again, that wasn't Michael Macklin. He wasn't trying out to punish anyone. If he felt you crossed him, he'd kill you for it. But he wasn't going out on a spree to avenge, the wrongs by society. He was just a psychopath. So, this isn't this. There are exceptions to this, but I think it's a better rule than not. And I think like I said, there are very few situations that this would not improve. There are some it wouldn't. And again, Macklin is one of them. And I think that's. I acknowledge that, and that's certainly worth acknowledging, too, because it would be foolish to ignore that and to think that this is the solution to all problems. It's just one tool that helps most problems, at least somewhat. So that's my view. At any rate, thank you all for being patient as we indulged our egos and had this discussion and a whole bunch of other discussions. And thank you very much to Jim for calling in. And what I'm going to do right now is just make sure. Last time I forgot to close out the the call and left it connected for and we get charged just for connecting. So that was fun. But Xandring, thank you very much for joining us. And I don't know if you're up for hanging out in the Discord. I'm probably not. I'm actually very tired at this point, so I'm probably going to disengage for a little bit. I don't know if you're gonna if you're planning on hanging out in the Discord. What do you think, Xandring?
Yeah, I can for a little bit. If people want to come in, if there aren't a whole bunch of people in there, I'll probably take a nap before I get back on the road again.
All right. Well, again, thank you all for watching. Thank you to the mods and to everybody for helping out. And we will be seeing you tomorrow for Overtime with Joe. We will be doing After Dark on Friday. And then it is 2 weeks from today. We will be having Seth Andrews on how to improve the discourse. So kind of apropos. Thank you all for joining us. See you tomorrow. Welcome to In Time. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell for notifications. We read all of your comments, and if you like this video, please don't forget to share.